Hey there, everybody. My name is Pat Rothfuss, and I'm sort of informally hosting to even call it like a chat session feels a little bit more dramatic than I intend it to be. Um, I how about this? This is a symposium. This is which technically means wine drinking party, so I'm not equipped for that.
Oh
Um,
man.
like I've blown it
Missing
out of
out.
the gate, folks. Um, just a loose discussion about mental health, self-care, brainings, our brainings. This is brainings discussion with some people whose company I very much enjoy. Um, Matthew Mercer from many things. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly, and then you can say whatever you like to pitch best about yourself?
Okay, yeah. Oh boy. My name is Matthew Mercer. I'm a voice actor in Los Angeles, California. I'm also the dungeon master on Critical Role. And if you don't know what that is, then can't help you. But yeah, here amongst two amazing people I look up to very much, and happy to be a part of this. So thank you for having me, Pat.
I am just delighted. And we have Holly Conrad as well. And Holly, you wanna introduce yourself?
Sure. Yay. Hello. My name's Holly. I do a lot of YouTube stuff, and I play a lot of D&D, and I'm usually dressed as a trash witch, but I am not a trash witch right now. I also rescue birds, and I also try to advocate for self-care and mental health a lot, and all the things that I do. So mostly I'm just an internet clown who also enjoys medieval things and D&D and art. Yay.
And lurking behind the scenes, unseen yet not unloved, is my fabulous assistant Amanda, who will be keeping an eye on the chat. If you guys have questions, you can ask them there. I'll be keeping a bit of an eye on this. However, as like task shifting is not my specialty. Amanda might grab a couple of questions and drop them into the chat here. Just to start, kind of because I did kind of reach out to you guys, it seems fair that I might just go first. Oh, and I guess I haven't really introduced myself other than saying my name. I write fantasy books. I have D&D'd with both of these folks to my vast delight. And I also run a charity called World Builders, which in some ways this stream, the charity is sort of my excuse to do fun streaming things that I feel they're beneficial to the community. And at the same time, we can raise awareness of World Builders, the charity that I kind of started accidentally that works to rally the geek community and make the world a better place. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that maybe halfway through the stream. I'll make an official pitch for the charity. But I will maybe for the second piece of introduction, I'll say I am bad at self-care. You know, Holly, you said you advocate for it, and
That doesn't mean I'm good at it. I advocate for it.
It's a very important distinction.
Yeah.
I'm even late to like learning the term self-care, which I think might come partly from the fact that I live in the Midwest. I think there's a big stigma against not just therapy or diagnosis or medication for mental whateverness, which maybe I should use my good terminology here, neuroatypical or whatever brain doings. Here in the Midwest, it's kind of not so much a culturally acceptable thing. You go to I go to New York and everyone's like, yay, my therapist. I go to Seattle, everyone is like who's on medication? And here in the Midwest, again, here in Wisconsin, small town Wisconsin, I think many of the people here, well, I would say 85% of the people here are probably no more than 3 generations removed from small family farms. And I think as a result, like the thought of going to someone for help just because maybe you don't feel good is viewed as such frivolous bullshit. Because like, are you sad? Better plant the crops or you will die. And like that mentality might have been very evolutionarily useful 200 years ago, but carried forward into this modern society, like it leads to a lot of people like not thinking in terms of self-care, working themselves to death, and not acknowledging that like a professional would like really maybe give you some good advice and help you tune up your things.
Yeah, no, that's cultural. I find also in the South. A lot of my family is from the South, and I grew up, family from the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, that kind of just region there. And to a similar degree, it's something that you didn't do. If you had a problem, then well, you just need to go not talk about it in front of people and embarrass yourself. It's just sort of a thing you deal with. There's probably a book about it that'll make you feel better, and dinner will be ready in an hour.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in my family that would probably be much more functional human beings if they were able at a much younger age to identify and accept the fact that they had various neuroses or problems dealing with elements of their life, and could reach out to somebody even just to talk about it. And now later in life, seeing the repercussions of it, it's been really unfortunate.
Yeah. What parts are you from originally, Holly?
So I have a weird kind of background for this because I was born in Los Angeles, but I grew up in San Bernardino, which is like an hour and a half inland. And it's very more like the Midwest. It's definitely not like Los Angeles. It's the desert, like the hard desert. So it's like middle of nowhere. Like it's very, very close-minded, very strange. It's like a kind of like a horror movie. So yeah, it was a weird place to grow up, and like it was not a very friendly place to grow up, I think. But I could drive to Los Angeles, so I would, when I was in like late high school, I would go to LA a bunch, and I had a good group of friends. But yeah, it was a weird place to grow up. But it was just, a lot of drug abuse in that area, like a lot of that. Not a lot of like advocation for self-care or any care, because it's just like people there are just trying to survive. And so a lot of people are just really, really like just trying to make ends meet. And then that of course leads to drug addiction, and the area is just really, really poor. So, and that's just how it was, because it's the desert. It's like in GTA when you go out where like Trevor lives, that's where I'm from. Yeah, that's literally where I'm from.
Yeah.
That's it. That is like that's, yeah. Yep.
If you don't mind my asking, it sounds like a little bit like we're kind of, and I'm surprised at that because, no offense, I kind of think of you guys as LA people just because I know you from those parts. So given that we all seem to have come from a culture that like doesn't necessarily support this sort of self-awareness even, let alone like kind of like figuring it out or thinking about it or dealing with it or getting help of some sort. How did you guys kind of come to the awareness that maybe something was going on?
Well, for me, I grew up rather quickly. My father was raised Catholic, and not in a very good Catholic school. He grew up with a really bad stutter. I grew up with a bad stutter, but his was far worse than mine. And that led to a lot of abuse within the school of people that thought he was doing it for attention or the devil was in him. And so there's a lot of stories there. But from that standpoint, growing up, luckily my parents began to identify some of these behaviors and kept me out of a lot of that. But those behaviors and them they grew up with began to emerge within their lives. And so I got to watch my parents in some ways become the children of the family when I was in my late teens and I became the parent. where my father went through a lot of drug addiction issues for many, many years. Kind of happens when you're a musician in the 70s and 80s, I suppose. But in having to keep the family together for a lot of years, at first I thought, oh, well, I'm very mature for my age. But then you begin to realize some of those behaviors either can rub off on you or help make a very, very clear statement in your own faults. And that comes through just personal relationships, that comes through how you deal with stress, how you deal with career. So in trying, I guess for me, I began to discover my own issues and really come to terms with them over the course of my life, and helping a lot of other people and trying to understand and kind of mother hen people that I could identify and help them talk about their problems, but I never really had somebody to talk to. And so it was a very internalized process of recognition over the years, and I'm still kind of working on a lot of that to this day, really.
It's interesting how some people seem to grow into it, or like this slow dawning realization. Last year I did one of these with Travis McElroy, and he said that it really crystallized. He goes, I've always known I have a little social anxiety. I have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And he's like, and then he was having a kid. And he's like, I thought I knew what it was like to be anxious before. And then we were getting ready to have a baby. And he goes, suddenly I knew what really I could be anxious about. And it started to like take over. And then the catalyzing event for him was they went in for a well baby check, and they kind of checked some things out. And then one of the nurses looked at somebody, and then somebody whispered something. And then they said, a doctor came in and said, we got to get this baby out of here right now. And then everyone whisked his wife away. And he sat in that room because like they all were taking care of business. And then he was just sitting there. And then eventually somebody came back and said, okay, oh, you're still here. And I'm going to jump to the end right here because like baby's fine, right? You know, good. Baby's fine, mama's fine. It all turned out okay. Baby was preemie, and they did their good job as doctors and nurses. And then Travis, and I hope I'm not misremembering this story terribly. It has been a year. We've got this old stream on my Twitch channel if anyone wants to look at it. But somebody came in afterwards and said, okay, and I think it was only like 15, 20 minutes. But that's like that's forever and a goddamn day, right?
Yeah.
It came back in and they're like, okay, everything's whatever, and looked at him and said, you might need to see a therapist. Like this person just slam dunked it and said, and like was talking, and he was talking and he was responding, and okay, we got to take care of this. It's okay. Give me, and he goes, so you might have post-traumatic stress disorder. And Travis went, huh, okay. And immediately started going into therapy. And he says, and it's great. And it's wonderful. And he's like, there's more to it than that. But for him, and I think this happens to a lot of us where, and especially, again, in the Midwest, you take care of other people, but you don't take care of yourself.
That's been a very heavy theme in my life.
Yes, same.
I mean, that's hugely selfish, right? To take care of me? Like, how gauche.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Holly?
Yeah.
Oh man. It's like, all right, let's go in with this both feet. So I grew up very fast too. Growing up, my mom developed MS, which is multiple sclerosis, when I was about 2 years old. And so and we used to live in the mountains. And then, and my dad was also an alcoholic and smoked weed and all this stuff. So I also got a really bad illness when she started developing her illness. I had ITP as a 6-year-old, which is a thing where you like literally start bleeding out of your eyes, and like it's like this really weird thing that I survived. I was okay, but like it was
obviously
nuts. Yeah, it was nuts.
Jesus
It was nuts.
Christ.
But like, so, and I had my grandparents. So I had a granny and pappy who I was very, very close to, and they were more like my parents than my parents were. So when I moved to, we moved out of the mountains, and my mom's, she couldn't walk. I mean, I don't remember her walking like my whole life, but I was her caregiver. So here's an 8-year-old taking her mom to the bathroom, like helping her through the house, cleaning the house, everything, like cooking, like anything. And then my whole life was that. That's what I did. And then when I was like 14, my granny died, who was like my real mom. And then that was everything just like fell apart. Like the whole thing, like my dad ended up leaving. I ended up having to take care of her like after college, and like the whole thing, it was really, really, really bad. And like, oh, it was just really bad. There's a lot more, but like she was also incredibly abusive, like mentally and sexually abusive. So she was also an abusive person to me. So I didn't know that. I thought that my life was totally normal. So until I was literally, I think I was 20, like I studied abroad in Edinburgh in Scotland, and I was away from my parents for a year, the longest I'd ever been away from them. And I realized like slowly while I was there, it was because I wasn't in that like fugue of abuse. I was like, this isn't normal. Like something is wrong here. And I had to figure that out on my own. And so when I got back, I saw a therapist, and they were like, yeah, your mom should not be asking you to take care of her and like literally give up your entire life. Like I had gone to university, perfect grades, all this stuff. Like I wanted to go work in special effects. Like I wanted to make props, and just like, and it was, I didn't understand what abuse was. So I had to be told by that therapist, like, this is abuse. And now after that, I've gotten a lot of therapy. I went to like a hippie therapy camp. It was great. I got medication. I got all that kind of stuff. But it took me until I was 20 or 21 to even realize what was happening to me. And that's because of where I lived too, because it wasn't like, even so the teachers at school could have been like, hey man, like this seems like you got a lot on your plate. Like maybe you should maybe you should get some help.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, but it never.
Oh my God.
It never occurred. I mean, I put on the strong face because I was like, I have to get perfect grades. I have to be perfect. Everything has to be good, because if I survive, I can help my mom survive. I can help my parents survive. And to this day, my dad still won't say he's an alcoholic to this day. So it's just like, but I got out, and that's, and I still go to therapy and do all that. But it's just like why not in high school? Do they have a thing where they're like, hey, these things are bad. How about you talk to someone about them? Instead, they're just like, make sure to do well on your AP tests, or you're gonna die in a fire somewhere.
Yeah, well, that speaks to the whole issue of the faults in the public school system in America. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is no focus necessarily on the mental health of children more than it is about teaching the approved curriculums to get the highest test scores so they can get the best budgeting to their school districts, and it just becomes a numbers game. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of these emerging discussions about occurring, awareness of mental illnesses in youth because of this process, because they're having to discover this outside of where they spend most of their time, between their families and their school. They can only really find out why they feel the way they do and why they feel so alone or not functioning correctly from their standpoint, until they can find communities out there and have the opportunity to know that this is it's normal to be not normal. And
Yes.
and there are ways to better your quality of living and sense of self-worth. And it just kills me to think so many people like you, Holly, who went through these periods of time without knowing that what their life was not healthy and not right.
Yeah, well, that's why I advocate for it so much, because
Yeah.
I'm just like, if something is happening and you're not, you feel so lost and miserable, getting good grades isn't going to help that. Like getting an A on your paper isn't going to make that any better. But that's what I channeled my energy into, was trying to do the best I could, because I felt like that was the only answer, because that is what the school system taught me. So it's like,
Yeah, I have some real strong opinions about school, not just because I have a couple of kids, but because I was a teacher for for a goodly while. And I was a tutor before that. And honestly, I've probably been a teacher my whole life, and I'm just kind of did it professionally for a while. I can't seem to not approach things pedagogically, which I suppose is why I am holding like a discussion about things that I feel like people should think about and talk about. But I think you made a really good point about the schools. I do think that there's two kinds of teachers. There's the teachers who look at it and go, we'll always need teachers. And then you get a degree and then you do a job. And honestly, I don't want to cast aspersions on those teachers. I think of them as like bricklayers, and you need bricklayers because you need buildings. And then there are the people who are sort of called to teach. And the bricklayers never probably are going to be A+ teachers, but they're also probably never going to be D- teachers. The ones that are called to teach, I've seen them quite frequently. They're like, I'm gonna teach everyone the miracle of reading. And then if they experience disillusionment, they spiral down really fast because effectively they're losing faith. And the relevance to this particular discussion is, I think for a while, the culture valued teachers. And if the culture values something, and then these people are rewarded in culturally appropriate ways, which honestly means money, like
right.
for real money and insurance and job security and their own like psychological support system.
And not just standardized tests either, just
Exactly.
like actually
support from the infrastructure and the government.
Right.
Because, when, the schools I was going to, Wisconsin, in our state motto, had education as one of the things. One of the mission statement of Wisconsin was education. We had a groundbreaking university system. We really value our teachers. They all had health insurance, and it was really progressive until Scott Walker came around. But what I watched happen for about 15 years is, if you remove resources from this system, you can run more efficiently in terms of teachers. But if you leave slack in the system, people who are teachers do care about children. Either you're called to, or you realize it's part of your job. And if you leave a little slack in the system, you don't work everyone to like a bloody nub, then they can interact with the children, they can form better relationships, and they have freedom to engage in extracurricular emotional support. Because I know that we've all had teachers who like have reached out to us at some point and said, hey, are you okay? Or
at least just been there. Like just been there as a person to talk to
listen, or to start a club, or to just be relaxed, or have office hours. And as budgets get cut, and as funds are reallocated, and as their insurance is taken away, what happens is you lose the people with other job options, you lose the people with pride, you lose, and the people who are left are stretched so thin that they don't have the emotional, mental, physical wherewithal to provide some of those other support systems to the children. And I think we're going to be seeing the horrifying repercussions of that in our culture for decades.
I think we're already seeing that, like in the lack of compassion, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. To do mine really quick, and I will admit, I feel bad going last, because I had a pretty great kidhood. I had really great parents, like true, and I don't just say this in the context of whatever, straight up excellent, loving parents. Not without fault, right? Let's not glamorize them, but truly excellent parents, loving and empathetic, taught me to care about the world, taught me to take care of other human beings. And in some ways, I am absolutely that typical middle-class white boy who made it through most of, like, up until college without experiencing any real legit hardship. And it wasn't until, and then like just bumbled through college, had a good time. And it wasn't until I got published and then I got busier and then busier and busier and busier that like some shit started to rattle loose. Like a lot of the things that were fine with a little slack in my system really started to flare up, or the fact that I had not known about them or treated them or been aware of them, they became more and more exacerbated. For me, what I have is called psychophthalmia. It is the slightly prettier cousin to manic depression, or type 2 bipolar. It's one of those mood disorders. And it's very common, especially among creative types, especially among writers. Writers have like a statistically huge prevalence of mood disorder. To the tip, like writers as a class experience like 6 times more mood disorder than the general population, and 10 times the degree of suicide. And psychophthalmia is it's not like manic, like true manic depression where it's like, angels talk to me in my mania. And then, and then you go way down and it's like, I cannot get out of bed. I am the worst. I go a little bit higher than a regular person. I go a little bit lower than a regular person. And as soon as it was diagnosed, I went, oh, you mean my Hamlet mood? Because even it's like so far back as high school, like, and I remember this week worth of time where I'm like, I did not talk to anyone. And because I was in high school, right, I wore all black clothes and I was just scowly and sulky. And one of my teachers, again, who was a good man, he pulled me over after class and said, whatever it is, it's okay, which was very true, although it's not what I wanted to hear. Now I realize I was going through like a mild depressive episode. What really screws me these days isn't the depression, although it's not a treat. It's when I go up a little bit, and I now have a term for this other bit, which is it's my mania. I experience something called grandiosity, which, let me tell you, is delicious. It's the feeling that I feel when I'm out and I'm like, I own all of this. It is mine. And I am the god of this place, and I can do anything. And like I said, it is a delicious, delicious psychological state to be in. And it's not entirely inappropriate for an author, right? But what happened, and it used to be I would strut my dumb 20-year-old ignorant ass around the college campus and feel like I was king of the world. And nothing really bad would happen because I had no power or responsibility. But then I got published and I became sort of professionally attractive to people. And then they'd be like, hey, do you want to write a comic book? And I'm like, I do want to write it. I want to write 100 comic books. I can do that in 2 weeks. And because in my mania, I feel so much energy and power and whatever, I will take on any project that's offered to me and then create more projects. And then even if I come back to normal, my life is on fire.
Oh, no.
Because like I've committed to do all these things. And if I go down, then, oh,
Did he disappear?
I think we lost him.
He went down. He's back.
am I back? Yeah, I
There
just clipped out for a moment there.
That's okay.
But so that's one of the things that kind of gets to me. I do have some a little bit of OCD as well, not to a clinical level, but I have control impulses. I have anger impulses. Again, I love the term neuroses you brought up before. I think they technically got rid of it in the new DSM-R. Like, I don't think technically neuroses exist anymore. But my therapist said, he goes, I miss it because it's nice to be able to identify something that you got a little more maybe than is good or normal, but you're not like full blown, like this isn't you on fire. But yeah, I worked for years to get my anger under control. And I struggle every day to not feel like I need to control everything and save the world. I have a bit of a savior thing as well.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognized in kind of a similar way, I guess you could say, in growing up, I love my parents to death. They were amongst their faults. I mean, my father was bipolar, which combined with alcoholism and drug addiction is a delightful spectrum of experiences. But he's a wonderful dad. But you know, he had his issues, and so into becoming when I say that, I became the parent in a lot of ways. Like, my parents were severely in debt and had a lot of tax debt. And then I had to get a job right out of high school instead of going to college so I could help support them and my brother as well, who was still in school at the time. And so I was working to help support them while also being the emotional backbone of the family for a long time. And like, my credit was ruined because we had to put everything under my name as soon as I came of age. And so what this did was it instilled with me this need to work as hard as possible to take care of the world. That behavior to this day creeps into my life, where I don't allow myself the opportunity to relax. I'm afraid that at any moment that I'm not trying to fix what other problems are out there or put out fires, and I'm going to lose control and it's going to fall apart. I'm going to end up being like my parents were, you know, and that causes me to work myself to death. That's caused me in previous like friendships and relationships difficulty because people felt like they weren't a priority in my life. And you know, it's been its own nerve-wracking thing. I'm getting all kind of anxious talking about this.
It's hard. It's not easy to talk about.
Yeah. The main thing I'm finding that I've struggled with my entire life, and only recently, in recent years, been able to really identify, is a unique kind of merger of, I don't know how to describe it, a very extreme imposter syndrome perpetually, combined with a lifetime of fair body dysmorphic disorder.
Could you give us the quick definition of that? Because I have an impression of it, but I've never known somebody who has had it and heard them kind of talk to me about it.
Right. So, well, the body dysmorphic disorder, it identifies an individual who, regardless of their physical states, regardless of their health, regardless of compliments, regardless of any type of support, they cannot help but see themselves as a, for lack of a better term, a grotesque person.
Wow.
Like, to the point where growing up, I would not go to pool parties because I didn't want to have my shirt off. I didn't, even today, I just don't go to the beach. I mean, the few times that I've forced myself in recent years to, like, you know, go to a pool for like a friend's bachelor party or whatever, like, I'm still keeping my shirt on in the pool. And, you know, and the few times I've decided not to because people get me shit about it, I'd get really uncomfortable and just leave the pool.
Yeah.
Walking past my mirror today, I try to avoid eye contact with myself. And when I do, it's usually like hating what I see. You know, it's taken a lot to get comfortable. It's even like take a shower with my wife. You know,
Oh, wow.
it's interesting. And you know, I'm getting sorry. I'm getting better. It's harder when I'm working really hard because then I can't take care of myself as much, and that helps offset it a little bit because when you're healthy or you're eating better, you're exercising, you can't help but feel a little better just energy level wise. So as I get busier and force myself to work harder because of the other scenario, I end up kind of falling into this downward spiral of self-loathing. And then to compound that with the you know, the imposter syndrome idea, as much, and I can objectively say I've done a lot of really, really good things I'm proud of in my career. I've worked really hard over the years to get where I am, but the entire time I'm just waiting for everyone to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, and I've faked my way through it to this point, and everything's just gonna disappear and fall from under me.
Yeah, like because it feels like you got no foundation under you, right? Or at least that's what it feels like to me. Like and I have a littler version of that actually has been growing up more because like I've met with really great success, but I don't really think of myself as a good writer. I am good at writing, but like there's so many other people that actually like write their books, whereas I don't. When I do it, but I don't do it. And you know, to hear when you mentioned, because I contacted, and the reason honestly I contacted both of you because you're funny, articulate people that I like talking with. And this is going to sound weird. So I assumed that you were neuroatypical because literally well, not every, there's a very small statistical outlier of people who I know and love who aren't. You know, and when I run into them and I'm like, what is your thing, by the way? And they're like, oh, I don't got one. And I'm like, wow, tell me about that. And so I was just kind of, I'm like, hey, do you want to talk about self-help or whatever? And when you mentioned the body dysmorphia and the imposter syndrome, I will admit, like, I was floored. Because I never in 100 years would have suspected. Have you guys heard the term invisible illness?
I've heard the term. Remind me what it refers to.
It refers to, like, in some ways, like an autoimmune thing where like you are sick, but you don't look sick. Right. You know, like lupus or one of these things where you just, you know, you don't have very many spoons to get by in your daily life. But also depression is an invisible illness because like you can walk through your day and you do your job and you have a relationship and you are a dad and you mow your lawn. And then eventually you kill yourself because you have been sick all along and it's been invisible. And, you know, as opposed to like gushing blood off of something, people are like, Jesus, Ed, go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the front facing us looks like pretty okay. And so like I never in a million years would have guessed that you had either one of those things. I
do the mirror thing too. I don't I don't look in reflections or mirrors. I just can't. Like it's sometimes I don't even film anything because I can't look at myself to edit it. Like I just can't do it.
Yeah, I've had it's been a really interesting phenomenon as Critical Role has become a thing. Voiceover seemed great because nobody had to look at me. You know, it was the perfect form. If I was a person who loved theater and loved performing arts, the last thing I wanted to be was on camera. Even today, when people want to take pictures with me, I'm trying desperately to just find a smile that I don't think looks absolutely horrible. Like I've never, ever, ever liked my smile my entire life.
That's why I wear costumes. I wore costumes because I had to cover myself up. That's why I started cosplaying. I mean, I love video games and I love that stuff. But as soon as I found out I could put on something that wasn't me, then that was why I felt I could be out in public. I felt like that I could actually be accepted if I wasn't just me. There was a reason people would like me and think that I was okay looking, and that was because I covered myself in something I worked really hard on.
Halloween was my favorite holiday, and then I discovered the cosplay community in a very similar way. It gave me the drive. I mean, at the time when I first got into the community, it must have been 2002-ish or so. Sorry, cosplay folks, I'm old. And this was
2004 for me, so
oh
not
wow,
too far.
okay, not too far. And I saw this as an opportunity to finally pull out of something and be something else. I had such a passion for video games and anime and these characters, and I love costumes, and it was a big thing every year for Halloween to just kind of not be myself for a bit. You know, I never felt comfortable in my own body. What if I was for a time in somebody else's? And at the time I was probably about 235, 240 pounds, and very unhappy because that just compounded the illness. And so I worked really, really hard for half a year to drop like 70 pounds in 6 months, which in hindsight was not very healthy. But it was all for the driving goal to eventually be able to dive into this community and be something other than me. And it helped in many ways, but looking back on it too, it's a weird, fucked up way to dive into it like I did. But, you know, we do weird, fucked up things.
Yeah.
Finding the lever in your own head, because like I was always a bit of a pudgy kid, and then I went to college, and there was fencing and martial arts, and like a salad bar, and I lost my freshman 15, and so like I was sleek as a running deer, and like kind of pretty for that brief moment in time, but it kind of goes by the wayside. And then when I started to lose that again, I found, and I'm like, oh, I should get in shape. But the lever in my head was Halloween, and I'm like, I want to dress up as Pan, and that it's like that's going to involve me going shirtless, and like that was like being healthier, being more attractive, being whatever. Those were not sufficient psychological levers. Mm-hmm. Like the ability to dress up for some reason, right? And I think I think that's one of the benefits of therapy, or like talking to other people. And the reason that I do love talking with people about this is finding like, maybe this seems weird, but this is what works for me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I find that psychological lever that worked on myself, where I did actually get in shape and whatever, and I made a pretty Pan that year. And then if I'd managed to like maybe build off of that, I would not be the man I am today, which is to say, twice again the man I was when I was that beautiful Pan. In terms of tricks dealing with the things that you guys deal with, because like just like useful ways of thinking about things or helpful stuff, like what have you stumbled onto that that's been like good, either long-term or short-term, or even like a stepping stone? Like, it's like, this wasn't great, but it let me get through this. And then, in the long term, this was my plan. Do you guys have anything like that that you'd care to mention?
With just trying to think off that, being on the internet doesn't help all the time.
No, no.
Let me
No,
tell you.
I remember one of the first comments I ever got when I first did like a hosting thing was, "You're so ugly, you should kill yourself." And I will
Jesus
remember that for the rest
Christ.
of my life. And I'm like, great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And when you're already having those thoughts of, self-loathing
Yeah.
and it's funny because you can be given 1,000 compliments, but that one negative thing is all that's going to stand out against them.
Well, yeah, and it's like I don't know if you do this. This is really bad, and I really should not do this. But I know where to find all the worst comments. I know where they are. I know the forums where people will just continually shit talk myself and my friends, and I will go there. I will go there and I'll read them just to validate that I'm awful.
Yep.
Just to validate that I'm bad.
Completely. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Which is not okay to do. Like,
it's not
you
okay.
should not do that.
That's
but
the
because
opposite
of
of
my
a
mental
trick.
illness,
I know.
no, but that's my mental illness going. If I go there, I'm gonna get whatever my brain wants to realize that all of this is true, and my brain gets some kind of like, I don't know, endorphin from seeing these comments, and just like and that's not good. When I do that, I tend to just be like, okay, that's not good. But it's a compulsion. Yeah. It's a compulsion because it validates that negative voice in my head.
It's weirdly comforting to know that you do that too.
Okay.
That's why we have these talks. Like everybody in the chat right now is like thank God.
Like it's something that I've gotten better with it over time. But yeah, you can't. It's a weird compulsion. You're almost like you're almost looking in hopes that it's not there.
But you know it's there.
But you know it's there, and
it's there.
But it is, and yeah, I don't know. It's
a
weird
compulsion. It's an OCD thing. Like I feel it's almost like a subconscious thing. There's something that our brain is getting out of it, and I don't know what that is.
No, I call it pushing a bruise. It's like that weird kind of rush of like, it hurts, but I weirdly like it for no reason and keep doing it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Or like emotional cutting in a weird way, I guess you could say. It's a release, an emotional release about kind of the self-inflicted pain of seeing this, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I'm still trying to understand it.
My version of that was always, they actually have systems in place to do it to authors. It's the Amazon book reviews. And early on, and here's a great example of, it's interesting here. I invited a couple other people, and one of them, and I think this is really helpful to say in this stream, one of them said, oh, the thing is, what I have isn't that serious. A lot of people have bigger problems than mine. And I manage mine without medication or therapy. And I don't think that that's a good message to send. Mm-hmm. And what I told her is, no, actually, it's like we want to, if you don't want to, that's fine. But one of the things, the reason we have these discussions is it's so comforting to see how the same we are. And then it's comforting to see how different we are, because, I know that somebody in the chat right now is thinking, oh God, I thought I might maybe need to get some therapy, but it's obvious that I don't, because what they have is bigger. And so what I'll mention is mine, which is the lesser version of this. I will play the role that I thought that if she came in, she would be like, oh, I have some of that too. Here's the thing. I talked myself out of getting help for my depression for years because I had one friend who was so depressed that he could not keep a job or some weeks get out of bed, and the teeth rotted out of his head because he just stayed in his room mostly for a year, and his friends would bring him food and whatever, but didn't take care of himself to the point of not brushing his teeth. And he just, and I'm like, I don't have depression. Sometimes I'm just a little bummed. Here's the thing. He had it. I have it. We both could have used help. Don't talk yourself out of it. For the Amazon book review things, what I would do is I go in, because when the book hit, it hit pretty well and people liked it pretty well. And I would go in, and this is a great example of what your brain is talking about. 1,000 people will love you. And I would go down and I'd be like, 5-star, 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 right? And I'd scroll like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and then I'd be like, and then it'd be 1 star, and then I'd read it.
The whole thing.
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like every word.
I can still quote some of them, and this is from 10 years ago. Here's one of the quotes. Patrick Rothfuss, all of Rothfuss's female characters are June Cleaver housewives or whores. You know, and I'm like, you know, and truthfully, there's a grain of truth in what he says in the first half of the book Fair, right? But like the fact that I remember this after 10 years, why does our brain do that? But here, let me also tell you, this is why it's absolutely a brain thing, and it's absolutely unhealthy, and it's a true commonality of experience, in my opinion. I would go sometimes 5-star, 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 and I scrolled, and I glance at them, and then I hit a 4-star, and I feel exactly the same way. Mm. And this is the secret. It actually has nothing to do with the external world. I'm looking for an excuse to do it to myself.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And I wish I could say that I purposefully and carefully like divested myself of that behavior, but I think it just got replaced by other similarly appetitive and unproductive stuff. Or other like bigger neuroses, like just ate up its space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what you were saying earlier about like tips and tricks, and we went the other direction briefly. I mean, for one, just to back up what you said, therapy is so wonderful if you can bring yourself to understand that you may need it. I knew for many years I could use it, but couldn't afford it. I didn't have insurance, and I was living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny apartment in the Valley, Van Nuys, for many years. My roommate, Greg Schistel, who I owe so much to this day still, you know, he helped keep me going at a time where he had to cover my rent a number of times, and I'd pay him back over time. So I could have used it, but I couldn't afford it. And when you can't afford it, you still should talk to somebody about it, whether it be a friend that you really trust, whether it be family, whether it be finding communities online that are now available of people that can be there to support and offer not just words of advice, but actual ways to deal with this type of behavior and thought process day to day. And then if you have the opportunity to go into therapy, even just talking about this stuff out loud, even just talking about this out loud weirdly in a public space, which I've never really done to this scale before.
Yeah, neither have I.
Yeah, it's scary up front, as I'm sure you heard my fucking wavering voice at the beginning. But like, it is weirdly comforting as well to get it out there, and also help know that maybe other people out there are helped by that connection of realizing, okay, I feel the same way. I have these same thoughts. I'm not too weird or different. It's normal to be abnormal.
I think that's totally it. And like, also it's like I saw like a lot in the chat where people were saying like, well, I don't have it that bad or whatever. And that's never a contest. Like, never think of it that way. It doesn't like, and I know though that like growing up though, like you could have some abusive friendships where a friend might be like, well, you talk about your problems too much. Don't talk about your problems. Like, people will say that when you're younger. And if you don't realize that that's, they're suffering, obviously, but like there are ways like there's no difference between one problem and the other. If you are suffering from mental illness, you could have the best life in the world and you could still suffer from mental illness because it's a chemical imbalance, or because you need something redone in your brain. Like, it's not any, there's no rhyme or logic or reason to it, regardless of what has happened to you. Yeah. So so don't think like, oh, I'm not, there's nothing really wrong with me. If you feel any of those things, like you need to go get help, because that's suffering for it. The longer you suffer with something like that, the worse it's going to get.
And playing off what you said there about friends saying, oh, you're being too negative or whatever. If you do need to talk to somebody in just your support group, make sure that you ask them and let them know kind of what you're asking. Are you, I could use your help and support. Are you willing to listen to me?
Yeah.
Because if there are people out there that either be their own issues they're going through and they don't in the moment feel emotionally capable of taking on even a little bit of somebody else's problems, they're likely to lash out in ways that aren't healthy unintentionally and shut you down. And that'll cause you to not reach out to anybody else because you're afraid that's the same behavioral experience you'll get if you reach out to anybody. So, so you just have to come at it with a very, soft, careful way and make sure that anybody else you reach out to is open to listening and just hearing out your thoughts and your scenario.
For sure.
Yeah. And picking that person, my life is really vastly improved over these last 2 years by having literally, there's my therapist, but I have a couple of friends who I can vent to. And who don't judge and who listen, and we have some of the same bad wiring, and sometimes we call each other on our bullshit, and sometimes we don't, because sometimes and that's what you mentioned, being specific about what you want from a conversation is such a great trick, because and again, this is a problem I have in relationships, and I think it's stereotypically, I don't know where it comes from, cultural or biological, but I think it's more of a dude problem, which is I am a fixer. I want to fix things. And so, my girlfriend comes to me and she says, so and I go, whoop, here's my toolbox. I will fix this for you. And sometimes that's what she wants, and sometimes it is help. And even maybe if it wasn't what she wanted, it's welcome if she does want help or advice. But sometimes she's just talking, And what I should do is say, oh, that sucks, And then they go, right? And then, because she's a grown-ass adult who maybe wants to take care of her own problem. And she was just venting. She wasn't saying, hey, Pat, fix my life. But that's what I do. I got to fix everything.
I resonate with you so hard on this. You have no idea. Playing into what we discussed earlier about, spending my life trying to fix and keep other people's lives together. That's always where I go to is, you've come with me with a problem. How do we solve it? How do we fix it? Trying to help you. And Marisha, more than any other person in my life, has helped me come to terms with the fact that you can't fix everything. You're not supposed to fix everything. And sometimes just listening, being open and commiserating with a shitty situation is so much healthier and so much more satisfying at the end. And what we call it is, those of you who watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's a great end of an episode where it's Zuko and what's wrong with my brain suddenly? The male lead aside from Yang, Boomerang. Oh, my brain's not working.
I keep thinking of Korra, so I can't remember.
I want to
that's the other show.
But he's not Xander.
No worries. I hate myself. My brain's not working to remember. But anyway, he's talking.
Sokka.
Sokka. Thank you, Chad. So and Zuko's talking about rough stuff in his life, and then Sokka starts talking about, it's well, my girlfriend turned into the moon. and Zuko turns to him and she goes, "That's rough, buddy." And so we call it "That's rough, buddy." It's just sometimes you just have to turn to the other person who's telling you the problems and go, "That's rough, buddy," and not fix it.
And that's so true.
I was talking with one of my friends at the university, and I'd spent the day sort of chaffing up some of my own emotional bullshit. And then, we started talking about something she was going through at the university and with her job. And she said, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And I went, they did what? Those motherfuckers. And she was like, right? And what she didn't just want that's rough. She's like, I am angry, right? And this is justified because this person was an asshole to me. And I'm like, that person is a double asshole. That's the worst, what they just did. And then she was like, okay, I am justified in my emotions. And I could see her relax. She did not have to carry all of that anymore. She could lay it down because like I was angry for her. And then, you know what I did? I said, you know what and I kind of was just ranting, but also kind of doing that fixing thing. I'm like, you know what you should do? You should write this and you should da-da-da-da. And then she was like, well, you know, actually, da-da-da. And it sort of freed her. I took all the angry in the room. I breathed up all the angry air. And then she was like, well, you know, the truth is I can understand where this person is coming from. And I mean, sometimes that is great support. And to comment on one thing, or to build off something you just said, the ability to comfort someone. I used to talk about it as if it were one of the a joy exclusive to parenting young kids. Specifically, like if it happened to me for the first time when I was helping babysit one of my girlfriend's nieces. And so a little like 18-month-old kid, mostly sleeping, woke up and was like, "Mama, mama." And just distraught in the way that a kid who wants his mama is, and tired, and it's nighttime and everything's worse at night. And so I picked him up, and you know, at this point I had no dadding experience, and so I just like did my level best, like most soothing voice. It's like let's bring all, and so comfort him and distract and whatever. And then he cooled down, and I experienced such a sensation of satisfaction, because the only problem with that kid had was that he was sad. And for years I said, this is something we don't get anywhere else in life, because if your friend is like, man, my dog died, and you can try to comfort them, but at the end of the day, their dog is still dead. You can't fix their problem. And I brought this up in a very matter-of-fact way, because this has been a little thing that I've talked about over the years as like, this is why it's great having kids. You get the satisfaction of genuinely helping. And then this friend at the university who's a philosophy faculty member, she said, well, you know, I don't know if that's true. She said, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. If your friend comes to you and they're distraught and you comfort them, the problem isn't that their dog is dead. The problem is that they're distraught. And it was suddenly I was like, oh my God, you're right. I have been absolutely ass backward in my thinking, because that's sort of like somebody coming and saying, man, my dog's dead. I'm like, well, better bring your dog back to life. It's like, no, that's not the solution. That's wrong. That's like wrong in every way. Instead, what they're looking for, you want to find a way to make them feel okay, because things are okay so long as you feel okay. And this is, you know, you mentioned, Holly, earlier, that, you know, oh, my life isn't too bad, or, ooh, I don't really need whatever. I will say that the thing that screwed me up kind of real bad for years is, you know, I got published. Some of my friends, my core group of friends moved away, and I was so busy that it took me years to realize that I had no more local friends. And I still had social interactions because I went to cons and I interacted with fans and did all this stuff online. But like, I had no psychologically nutritive, like, human interactions on a personal level. And apparently you can run for a couple of years on fumes before like everything starts to get like real bad in you. And here was the problem. I was real miserable all the time, and real unhappy and real angry and real sad at the time in which, like, my book was finally published and I was famous and people love me and I have money and I can buy a house, and I'm miserable. Just like so Oh, terribly miserable. And I was totally stumped because, like, if your dog dies and your car breaks down, you lose your job, you know what to do? You know, you fix your car and you get a new job, and well, you probably don't, that's not healthy to buy a new dog, but you know, I didn't know how to fix my life because my life was by the numbers good. So please, everybody in chat, if you're saying, oh, you know, I'm fine, things are good. If you don't feel good, you're not good. I'm not saying you always need to feel magical and shiny inside, and that's a huge fallacy of American thinking, that we deserve 100% all the time orgasmic bliss, and we all get to grow up to be an astronaut and the president. But yeah, it cost me years of my life feeling guilty for feeling bad because I wasn't loving my good life. Whereas, and as soon as I went into therapy, the therapist went, oh, have you noticed you're doing this? And I'm like, suddenly it moved around in my head, and I'm like, oh God, I've wasted 10 years. If I could have learned this 10 years ago. And which, like, when you said, Holly, like, you're like, why didn't I learn it in grade school? I learned it when I was 20. And I'm like, oh God, if only I'd gone to therapy when I was 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find, and just to play an earlier saying, kind of in the same realm of feeling, if you feel, I guess to play in a bit kind of the imposter syndrome earlier, like the kind of feeling like comparatively everyone out there has it figured out and you don't. One of the things that's really helped me in recent years, and Holly, chime in if you can agree with this, your experience, the more you get to know people, adults, successful adults, and really get to kind of have these kind of conversations, the more you begin to realize everybody has no idea what they're doing under the surface.
Oh yeah.
Every
that
human
doesn't change.
being.
Like, that doesn't change my brain, though, thinking that I'm a failure and everyone else is totally successful and put together. Doesn't change that fact. But the fact that it is true that everyone has something and no one is totally put together, like, that's absolutely true. But, like, especially living in Los Angeles, I find incredibly difficult. Like, I barely want to leave my house because it's just so many people are putting on the facade that they know exactly what's going on. And it's like, that's why I always try to be like, I don't know, I'm just here, like, whatever, I'm just a trash person. I just, come over and see my birds. But, like, it's like, I think that in itself is an unhealthy thing. Like, because they don't have it together. No one really does. And everyone has flaws. And those flaws and those things are what make us beautiful as people. And it's like Pat, as like a writer, like, what would a character be if they're not flawed? Like, or as like a DM, what would a character be if they didn't have a flaw? They'd be nothing. Like, how boring would they be? Like, it'd be the most boring character in the world. Like, the flaws are what make us so beautiful as people. And I think that's something Los Angeles needs to learn, but I don't know if it ever will.
I know. It's getting a little better in some places, but you have to find those communities. And even then, it's still Los Angeles at the core. But I mean, that's culturally. That's American culture. That's human worldwide culture to an extent.
Totally. It totally is, because that's what people want. They want to be seen as their Instagram picture with 10,000 filters on it.
Yeah. I think of it as it's one of the many, like, pernicious things about social media these days. And just out of curiosity, I'm 43. How old are you guys?
I'm 35.
Okay.
I'm 31.
Okay. So I get to be a little bit old man Rothfuss here. Because, like, I remember when, like, before the internet, but I was kind of almost a fully formed human before the internet existed. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I feel I'm very fortunate in that, because to attempt to form my self-concept in a world where I'm bombarded by everyone else's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, or Instagram is such a great example, where um, I think of it as we are always living in our own backstage, but we're always seeing everybody's on stage.
Yeah.
And like Instagram is so emblematic of that, where it's like they take 1,000 pictures and you don't see the light box,
No.
and they sent the food back 4 times before it came, and you're like, oh, their life is so good. They're in India. What a great dress. And like, for one, that was that person's whole goddamn day to get that picture.
Yeah.
2, it's like, these people are fucking miserable a lot of the times. Like, which I don't say with any schadenfreude. It's like, but it's so easy to look at someone and say, oh, here's this story. It's one of my favorite stories, and it's about Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel.
Okay.
Way back in the day, they formed a group before they were Simon and Garfunkel. They formed a group called Tom and Jerry. And they came up with a little song that really, they admitted later, it's like we were just ripping off the Everly Brothers. And it was called Hey Schoolgirl. And it's just, hey, schoolgirl in the second row. The teacher's looking at me, so I have to look way down low. And it's this catchy little song. You can find it on the internet. And it charted on these teen charts. And so Paul Simon tells this story of how the two of them, they're in high school, they're teenagers, and they're sitting in their car just parked somewhere because they don't have anywhere to go and they don't have money to waste just even leaving the car idling. And they're listening to the radio, and a DJ comes on and says, hey, everybody, here's a new one. It's from Tom and Jerry. It just hit #1 on the teen charts. And, and they start playing it. And Art Garfunkel turns to Paul Simon and says, those guys must be having a great time. And I think about that story a lot. Like, and I love that story before I became a published writer, where like, I know people look at me and they're like, oh, Rothfuss, you're living the dream. And I'm like, guys, I never dreamed this. I was my happiest, best self, poor, useless college student. I went to college for 9 years. You don't do that because like you're a driven individual. You do it because like I loved bumming around and talking to people and just like not doing anything much and kind of sometimes working on this book I had an idea for. And I was just happy. And then I wandered down this other fork in the road, and I haven't figured out how to be good. And honestly, what you talk about fixing the world, like now that I have a presence, now that people follow me, now that even I started this charity, which I love and I feel so proud of, is maybe the best thing I've ever done in my life. But I've gotta do it. I've got to do it. I got to do it perfect every year. And if I don't, I'm failing. I'm ruining it, And so it's suddenly this thing you did out of joy and to help and to make the world a better place. It blossoms and then it turns into a millstone and then it drags me down to the underwater. Speaking of, like that's a horrible segue. That's my worst segue ever. But let me, I don't want to sideline our conversation because I'm enjoying this. I knew I was going to love it. I'm enjoying it so much more even than I had hoped. But I would like to take a brief moment to talk about the charity that I run called World Builders. And I hope you will forgive me if I am going to do a screen share. Do it. And this is worldbuilders.org. We at World Builders rally the geek community in order to make the world a better place. Every year we have a big fundraiser where we raise money primarily for Heifer International. We'll talk about them in a quick second. Here's how it works. If you come in, you donate to us, we pass 100% of this money along to Heifer International, and you have the chance of winning a bunch of like fabulous geeky prizes. And you can see here on this page, I'm hoping, we're giving away more than like almost 6,000 discrete prizes, and many of those are composed of multiple things. The grand total is more than like $175,000 worth of swag. And so let me, just to show you, sorry, my computer crashed and I had to reload it here, so I don't have these tabs open. For example, for every $10 you donate to the fundraiser, you have the chance of winning things like, for example, if you love gaming, I'm guessing a few of you do, if you're tuning in to hear this particular trio talk. Holly or Matthew, have you seen Wormwood's gaming table?
Yeah, they're amazing.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
So cool.
It's ridiculous. They gave us one.
Nice.
Whoa.
They gave one to World Builders. And so a $10,000 black walnut gaming table with the reversible this recessed gaming area. It raises and lowers on a crank. There's a beautiful topper that's held together with rare earth magnets. There's these slidable drink holders and dice holders, and they will bring it to your house, carry it up the stairs, assemble it in your house, no matter where you are. Every $10 you donate gets you another chance to win this and literally thousands of other prizes. We're giving away literally tons of prizes, including a balcony cabin for two on the Joko cruise, which is a bunch of geeks all get together. It's like a convention, except you're on a boat, and so you play D&D, and then you hang out and you eat free food, and then you go to a concert, and then you drink rum out of a pineapple on a beach.
Seriously, guys, like this has been one of my dreams to do the Joko cruise my entire life. I'm probably going to enter to try and win this, so good luck. Come on, bring it.
I've never heard of that before.
Off the record, but on the record, like I want to bring you guys out next year.
Man.
I have just a little bit of pull with the cruise, so like let's talk. I want you on this boat.
Please do. Well, I remember seeing. Sorry, I mean to feature Jonathan Colton, which is what the cruise is named after, is a fantastic musician. I remember seeing him perform his first West Coast concert to 25 people, of which 20 were my friends, back in like 2006 or something. It was way long ago. So it makes me so excited to see something like this blow up. It's really, really cool. I've had friends who go in, and this cruise is fucking awesome.
I'd never even heard of it, so that's the first time I've heard of it.
It's the best. And they're like, Jonathan Colton's on the cruise, and he does a show, and so do Paul and Storm, and so do Molly Lewis, and so do the Double Clicks. And
so good.
And like Night Vale was there last year. And so like they were part of the stage show. And like last year, Justin McElroy was there with his wife, and they did a podcast of Schmanners. This year, Travis is going to be there. So I don't care what he wants to do, but I'm going to play some D&D with him. And maybe we'll do that on stage, and like everyone can sort of enjoy it. It's so cool. And again, every $10 you kick in, you get a chance to win, free cabin for two, all your food and drink. I mean, if you booze it up, you're going to have to pay for your own booze. But, everything is kind of included in this, all of the shows, all of everything. Here also, you can see some of the books that we are giving away, which they are legion. These are many of them first editions, many of them complete series, many of them limited edition or numbered or slipcased or signed books donated by authors and publishers. So many that like Like we literally could not take in any way an accurate picture of them. We're also giving away a bajillion games donated by like Cheap Ass Games and Mayfair. They give us a palette of these things to use as donation incentives for the express purpose of getting you to come in and like give some money to charity, and then we will send you something cool. Vi Hart, who I love with just all my heart, I didn't mean that to sound weird like it did. She made us this widget because I used to calculate the probability of the fundraiser on my own and shamed myself so badly mathematically that I needed to go to a professional.
Oh no.
I claimed at one point that somebody, if you donated a certain amount of money, you had 120% chance of winning a prize, which is pretty embarrassing. I am legitimately embarrassed that I did not just say that, I wrote it in a blog. And so Vi was like, oh, sweet summer child, let me do some math for you. So let's say you donate $50. You have a 35% chance of winning something, $60. There's 40%. What about enough for a goat? Now, why would you buy somebody a goat? I'll talk about that in one sec. 65% chance of winning something.
Wow. Other than goats are cute.
Yeah, other than goats are cute. I will now, well, and just to talk briefly here, because I happen to have this page open. What Heifer International does, and I'm going to try to keep this pitch tight because I want to get back to the mental health talk. We've all been watching TV at some point, and you see one of those gut-wrenching commercials where it's like they show you some starving child, and this music plays in the background, and it says, for the price of a cup of coffee, you can feed this child. And if you're like me, right, you feel like you've just had a hole kicked in you because you're like, I had 3 coffees today. I am an asshole. And you're like, why aren't I fixing the world? But here's the problem. Then I always thought, well, but I'm not doing that good. And what if I start helping this child for the price of a cup of coffee every day? What if things get worse? What if I need to make a car payment? do I have to pay for this kid to eat forever? It's called a dependency charity, and it has a lot of problems to it socially, economically, and honestly, psychologically. Because once you start feeding this child, are you going to stop? Because then you feel like an asshole, like a double asshole, right? What Heifer International does is they give people materials, tools, and training so that they can change their own lives forever. Here on my screen is a woman who I'm hoping to pronounce her name right, Dialy Faye. 2 years ago, Heifer came in and gave her a flock of chickens, 4 hens and a rooster. And the nice thing about chickens, spoiler alert, is that they lay eggs. A chicken lays on average an egg a day. Now you can eat those eggs. It's a great source of protein, great source of nutrients, especially for kids who need that shit. Or those chickens those eggs turn into more chickens, which then lay more eggs, which then become more chickens. And as gamers, right, as proper geeks, as system manipulators, right, as people who play strategy games, your initial 4 moves of this game has got to be more chickens, not anything else. You got to build up your resource production, right? And that's what Heifer trains these people to do. It's like, hey, be aware you can eat some eggs. Yes, do that. But also you can sell eggs for money. But also eggs become chickens, which of course these people know. Anyway, here's Nadiali. 2 years ago, she got some hens. 2 years later, she owns 150 chickens. Her farm is thriving. She sells these eggs, and it gives her a revenue stream. She's been given effectively a small business that also produces food that also gives birth to more small businesses. And her farm is thriving. More manure from the chickens means that her garden produces like 20% more, resources. She also now buys rams and fattens them up and then sells them again, partly because of this heifer training. What's more, and now her children eat 3 meals every day. Before, her children couldn't go to school. Now they are all going to school. And what's more, and this is a big part of what heifer does, it's something called passing on the gift, where she has gone to other people in her town and she teaches them, here's how you build a chicken coop. Here's how you take care of chickens. And by the way, here's chickens. She has done this for 11 other families. You know how much a flock of chickens costs? $20. You give us $20, we pass all of it to Heifer International, and you can win a bunch of awesome things. Or, and now I'm going to let Heifer talk to itself very briefly because I mentioned goats. And so, Heifer, oh, I'm doing it bad. Goats for Heifer video. This is a stream about how Pat Rothfuss can't perform simple Boolean. Well, you know what? I like this one. Let's watch this one here. It's only a minute and a half. It's absolutely worth your time.
If only there was audio.
At least there's a reading.
Oh, you can't hear her talking, can you?
No, we could read it though.
Okay.
Play some music, background music. In the arms of an angel.
Easy. One love, one life.
Yay.
Oh, I always get weepy. It's a little different when you can hear her voice and I see those little kids drinking that milk and I get a little weepy. It's hard for us to imagine. If you are watching this on a computer, it's hard to remember sometimes that you are among the 1% wealthiest people in the world. 60% of the world's population eats its dinner tonight after cooking it over an open fire. And I'm not saying on a wood stove. I'm not saying anything as a not in a fireplace. I'm talking about actually over a fire. And so to give somebody a cow produces 7 gallons of milk a day. They sell that milk, their children drink milk, and the revenue stream that comes in lets them buy medicine and schooling and clothes. And if you saw that woman talking, she's like, life used to be really hard. She goes, now we're going to take the money from the milk. We're going to buy another cow. Those cows going to have baby cows. I'm going to sell that cow. I'm going to buy a car. Then I'm going to start a business. This woman used to be poor, and now she has she's a respected member of her community. She is a business owner, and she's doing more and more. There's 1,000, there's 10,000 of these stories. A goat does something very similar on a smaller scale. $120 buys a goat, and suddenly that's a gallon of milk a day. And the manure improves your farm patch, and chickens go in and eat pests and weeds out of your garden. It's such a great charity, people. I would not set my life on fire for 2 months out of the year if I had not researched this charity so thoroughly. We have raised more than $7 million over the last several years. And that is all good-hearted geeks coming together because they want to make the world suck just a little bit less. And again, the added sauce is that you can win some really great stuff. Our sponsors give us these things just so we can give them away. Please consider coming in, donating, helping us out. And the one last thing I'll say is right now we're at, $6.91. Hey, okay, some people have been stomping in after seeing the videos.
Yay!
When we hit $715,000, an anonymous donor has offered to come in and give us another almost $300,000. Right. And because they're like, we want to help you make $1 million this year. And I'm like, thank you. That would be great. And so in some ways you can think of that. If you help us get to that grand total, it would be amazing for us and amazing for Heifer. It would be 1,000 families' lives are changed forever. Plus, again, you win cool stuff. And in terms of self-care, let me just say, you can do worse for your own mental health and sense of well-being and efficacy than to do something nice for somebody else. And if you chip in money, it's not all animals, by the way. $60 would buy a family tree seedlings that prevent soil erosion, provide shade, and produce like fruit or nuts, which is a great cash crop. $300 buys an entire village clean water. They do biogas digesters. $30 is a hive of honeybees, which will improve crop yields by 200%. Plus, people get honey that they can sell. Heifer has this sewed up. They've done this for 70 years. And I know that I'm not saying that your lives are great, but you have the ability. If somebody came into your life and said, hey, I know you're working hard, do these couple of tricks, and instead of making $25,000 a year, you'll make 50. Just think for a moment what your life would be like with twice as much income. Think of the ease you would feel. Think of the safety you would feel. Think of the security you would feel. Oh, I could, you can do that for somebody else for $50. You can help parents know that they can feed their children. That's it. That's all I got. I'm not asking you to put yourself into a bad financial position, but let's be honest. You can afford $20, right? I'm not going to bullshit around. Plus, come win a cool gaming table. If you don't, and I win it, I'm going to feel like an asshole, right? Okay, so thank you for listening to me talk about my charity. I hope that I did not drive away all of our lovely viewers.
No, they stuck with us, and I loved the video. It was great. All of it was lovely. But I have one question.
Yeah.
One question. Can we specify that it's a cute chicken?
I have actually seen pictures of many of the chickens. And they are adorable.
Okay. We're all good. All the money. There you go.
So we could field a couple of questions from chat. I don't know if Amanda has been One very last thing, right? Unlike most charities out there, World Builders, like more than 2/3 of our donations come from people coming in and they just kick in a little bit. Again, most of it's just like regular folks, not big corporations, not big businesses, not millionaires, just good-hearted geeks coming in. That's how we've gotten this far. So it's like, don't think, oh, I can't do that much. Oh, it's not worth it. You know, I let me guarantee I'm going to come over here, you know, onto my team page, the people that follow my stream here, and I'll see a bunch of people. Look at all of you. Look at you beautiful people. Look at you shiny geeks. $20, $30, everyone's coming in and donating. And it makes me, it just fills me with joy, right? This will have an amazing impact on these people's lives. So don't think I can't because you don't have any more than $20. $20 is amazing. If you have never made a charitable donation before and you do, you are amazing. Okay, now I'm for real done. I'm seriously done.
In that same vein, though, I have to say that doing volunteer work does help depression, and helping others is a big help.
Yeah.
Like I worked at animal shelters for a long time, and that always, and like for the Audubon Society, and I did a lot of obvious animal work for doing things like that, and that helped me a ton. So another good tip there.
Yeah, if you ever have an opportunity at a holiday, especially during the holidays, to donate your time to help at any nearby shelters or in any way, shape, or form to just reach out and find people that are less fortunate than you. It's amazing how cyclical that positive energy loop is, even for just a moment.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't mention about how I started the charity was I kind of started it accidentally on my blog. And I'm like, hey, if this is a charity I love, and if you donate, I'll match your donations. And I kind of thought like maybe I might double up on a little money I wanted to give to charity for the first time ever. And then it kind of spiraled into madness and I gave away all my money. Because like people, I really jumped through a lot of story there. People donated like $50,000 and that was like every bit of money I'd received from all my advanced book contracts. And so I matched it all and it all went to heifer. And I kept checking with my girlfriend and I'm like, is this okay? Like we raised like 10,000. Can I match that? And she kept saying, it's your money. Do whatever you want. But years later, she said, when you started World Builders, she goes, it was the first time I'd seen you happy in years. And I'm like, boy, was that when I started to maybe put some of the pieces back together? And I think it was. Like I found a productive place for me to put all those potentially catastrophic savior impulses.
Okay. Oh, I totally see that. That's why I rescue pigeons. I started with one pigeon and now I have 50. It's just like how does that happen? Oh, just crushing guilt and the need to help everything. It's like I'll go to the animal shelter with a friend who's like, I'm gonna adopt a dog, and I'm like, oh fuck, they have a pigeon. I'll be right back. And it's just like I just like get it. I'm like, and Ross, my husband, is like, one more. It's like, yeah, one more.
That's okay. Los Angeles needs its pigeon queen.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels good.
It does. It feels good. You know, help where you can, when you can. And you can donate to this charity with some certainty because we have vetted them as thoroughly as possible. I wonder if Amanda has been texting me questions here.
Let us
Either that or any that you guys have seen in the chat. I don't doubt for a second that you are better chat readers than I am.
I should look at chat.
I get nervous when I do streams, and so I draw the whole time. So I've just been drawing. So if I'm looking down. I'm just like doing doodles, do.
I'm just like, man, Holly just can't even be near me right now.
Oh, okay. Amanda said that if she opens up the chat window, it will show up on our stream. So that's okay. I'll pick a few here from the chat.
Right.
I will say, some people want to see your doodle sheet, Holly.
Oh, I can show them. I was just doodling things for my D&D game because I'm total garbage. So I drew my character. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see myself. Oh, there it is. I drew my character, and then I just did a bunch of weird like magic symbols for fun, and then I drew one of my friend's characters too. So there you go.
I love it.
But I was just doodling because that's I always do like a nervous thing when I'm on streams. Even when I play like my D&D game, I'll always be like drawing pictures and stuff. So it's just a thing.
Okay, here's a question. How can I get the courage to ask for help and forgiveness? I don't know what to do. And there's a few specific. I'm running out of time because right now I cannot sign up for classes next semester. But I mean, the base question, how can I get the courage to ask for help and forgiveness? Two kind of separate things there, but connected.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
I've dealt a lot with that feeling guilt. I've like a lot of my like mental health work has been around like guilt and feelings of guilt, because growing up with someone who has an illness and is also abusive is really hard, because if you're mad at them for being a shitty person, they're handicapped. So it's like you're in this weird middle place of not knowing what to do. So forgiveness is like a huge, huge thing. And I have some amazing books on like self-love and forgiveness that I always go back to by Brene Brown, who's amazing. And I think one is like Daring Greatly, and like she has like a whole series of books, but I always listen to her audiobooks because they're a lot about forgiving yourself and like the courage to be flawed and the courage to show the vulnerability of being flawed and having flaws, which is our fear of asking for forgiveness. This comes from we're showing that we're vulnerable, and that's the whole thing. So that's kind of my way of dealing with that. And she's also just like the nicest voice. It's like just your nice mom talking to you, and she's like from Texas, and I'm like, I like this lady. She's like a mom. Yeah.
Let's see what other good questions are coming up here.
There's one here. How do you know that a therapist is good for you, or how do you find a good therapist? That's a big one.
Well, one thing I do want to say is if you go to a therapist and it's not jiving, it's okay to stop going to that therapist and find another one.
Absolutely.
You're not locked in.
Yes.
And sometimes they just don't work out. A therapist might be really good for it in person, and a friend recommends it, and you go in and it's like, I don't think we're connecting. I don't think she understands my perspective. You give it a few shots and it's not working out. Don't feel like you failed or therapy is not for you. Sometimes the match doesn't happen. Talison's talked about it a bunch. He's jumped therapists many times, and it took him 6 years to find one that actually really kind of fits with him. Sometimes, hopefully it won't take as long for you, but sometimes it might. But the idea is just understanding you're not locked in, or that you're failing at finding the one person who could help you. Keep looking until you do.
Yeah, I had a therapist once who was like super into like, yeah, if you work out, you'll feel better. And I'm like, that's not really my thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was like, I could see how that might help people, but not for me. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One thing that I will say, and are you guys currently therapying?
I have not been in a few months just because I've been too busy. But I'm looking to start up again in the new year. I've been going off and on for the past couple of years, and it's been extremely helpful.
Yeah, I did. I was going to therapy like weekly, and then I got to the point where I was like, this just isn't enough for me. So I went to a crazy hippie therapy camp for a week where you give in your phone and you get like really intense therapy for like a week, and that was super, super helpful. Like it really like made me realize all of the things that I didn't realize in therapies. And it was really, really intense. So it wasn't fun. But since then I haven't gone to therapy really, and that was like a year ago. But I know I will again in the future. It's just like I usually just try and meditate or do other things. But and my medication helps a ton because I'm on Zoloft and Xanax, so I take my medication regularly, which that keeps me way better. So
awesome. And I will say too, even if you don't think you consider yourself a person who suffers from serious enough mental illness comparatively, therapy is helpful for so many things beyond just trying to work through a specific issue in your life that you're struggling with. It helps you just to have another person to talk to who's not connected intrinsically to your personal life, to speak out loud the thoughts you have, the issues or worries, the concerns and insecurities that currently might rock you on a small scale. And that itself, strangely, the word is therapeutic. It just saying and hearing these words out loud sometimes can help you solve problems that otherwise that quiet voice in your head has a hard time finding some sort of a solution to, or a path to begin to make better. So don't feel like there has to be a breaking point of stress or perceived mental illness before you should go to therapy. Sometimes if you have the opportunity, just give it a shot if you're having a rough week and see how it works.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what happened to me when I first went, is I was like, I'm having a rough week when I was 20. I should go see a therapist. And they're like, whoa. So yeah, they're like, and I still am. I wish I could get in contact with her again, because she was a great therapist in my hometown where I grew up, and she really did change my life. So
somebody here in the chat said it's like when you end up with a bad DM, right?
Yeah, totally.
And sometimes, here's the thing, sometimes they're a fine DM, but the game they want to run isn't the game that you want.
Exactly.
And so like that's a big thing. And honestly, sometimes they might be a great therapist, but just like your conversational dynamic is not going to work. Like maybe they have like an East Coast accent, and so did your drunk Uncle Ned, who always ruined Christmas, and you just can't get over it. Shit happens like that.
Yeah, no offense to them, but yeah.
The other thing is, I will highly recommend, and this is again, I don't want to say my flavor is the best flavor, but cognitive behavioral therapy is really kind of where it's at. Here's what it is. How you think about things influences how you feel about things. And then how you feel about things influences how you act. So we all want to be better people, but you can't work it backwards. It's not effective in the same way. You're like, people constantly, like, who wants to work out more? Everyone. Who wants to eat better? Everyone. Who wants to like be a more actualized human being? We all do. So why don't we? Well, because for so many very legitimate reasons. But part of the thing is you're thinking about your actions, and cognitive behavioral therapy starts with how you think about things, and that influence your feelings, because it was some philosopher that said, man can do whatever he desires, yet he cannot determine what he desires, or something like that. It was Wittgenstein. He said it way better than that. And, anything you're motivated to do, we've all done amazing things. The secret is to finding the way to make yourself truly desire these good things for yourself. And it's had a huge effect on me. I don't get angry anymore. It's not like I have to choke down my rage constantly. It's like I am legitimately a less awful person to be around.
I will also say too, depending on what your financial situation is, you can check into your local county health department and see what mental health services are available if you're unable to afford it on a budget. And I know for some people who are on more constrained monetary incomes, as I have myself been for many years, sometimes it's hard to switch therapists. Sometimes there's lists. Sometimes the process of that you have access to can be a very convoluted thing. But don't let that deter you from trying if the opportunity is there. It really finding your way through mediocre therapy to better therapy is better than having no therapy in a lot of cases. Not all cases, but in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I had a friend once who said, I said, so how's it going? Have you gotten into therapy? She's like, man, I did. And, blah. And I'm like, oh no, is she just kind of being like, I don't really need it. I'm resistant. And I'm like, so why didn't you like her? And she goes, well, she told me that maybe if I was upset, I should try counting to 10. And I'm like, oh no, you like legit, like fuck that person. That's not a good therapist. Like, and I think unfortunately sometimes people, might be good counselors, but and also some people are great and some people are bad at their jobs. Like find a good one. You deserve a good one. And that sometimes that means ditching one that's just not clicking with you. Other questions here. Oh, here's one. How do we deal with anxiety?
The tools can change from person to person very strongly. I've had some situations in my life where I've just thrown myself into the stress to try and solve the problem, kind of pushing through the pain, but that has not worked for me as well. So I'm still figuring out my tools. I don't feel like I'm in a place in my life where I can offer broad advice on that because I'm still figuring it out, and I don't want to give anybody incorrect advice. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, if anxiety starting to hit, talking about it with somebody I trust helps. If even just to get that ear to listen, or possibly some advice to give me direction if I'm having a hard time choosing a direction, and finding music. Music is a really, really big tool for me personally to get into a better mental state. If you know different genres, whether it be classical music, whether it be playlists you can find to just have either in the background as you're getting stuff done, or to step away from everything and take a walk while listening, that has been a helpful tool to me in the past.
I'm laughing because that helps me too, but mine's just the intro music from Baldur's Gate 2.
That's a good choice though, to be fair.
It's just like, no matter when I hear that, I'm like, I feel suddenly better. Like, it makes me so happy.
I love that. For me, it's usually old RPG soundtracks like Xenogears, Final Fantasy VII, stuff like
that. Those are the happy places.
Yeah,
like,
Chrono Trigger.
Any of those soundtracks, like
Yasunori Masuda or Nobu Uematsu. Those are my two go-tos, definitely.
That's awesome. I'm glad I'm not the only one that has video games as their happy music.
That is cool.
But yeah, for like anxiety wise, like I've gotten to the point where I can compartmentalize my anxiety and know that it's irrational. Like even just today, like I went to the doctor for like a minor thing, and they're like, well, we should really just check it more, so we're going to send you in for a scan. Immediately call Ross. I'm dying of cancer. I'm dying right now. I'm like and it's just like, and he's, I know that's a ritual we have. I do that. He calms me down, and then I realize, okay, it's not real. That's my anxiety. So usually what I'll do is I'll take my medication, because that's why I have Xanax to help me with my anxiety. So I'll take a small dose of that, and then just take a moment to think, okay, it's just my brain. That's all it is. It's just my brain. And it also depends on the kind of anxiety. Like that, like short-term irrational anxiety, I can cure pretty easily. But when it comes to like more like the greater anxieties, I think that's always a problem. And those you just kind of have to, like you said, like work through in your own certain way.
One of the tricks that I stumbled into is I think it's a really good point to say short term and long term, because there's like, oh no, in this moment, what do I do? That's different than like there's the difference between like trying to stop an avalanche and maybe making sure that an avalanche doesn't start as often. For me, one of the things that was kicking off my mood disorder, I've been kind of okay this year. And part of that is not because of like me engaging in a different mental process, but because I've specifically gone out and tried to make friends that I have like consistent social interaction with. And it's sort of just like given me whatever like mental lubricant I need to not like swing wildly back and forth between like up and down, or legitimately just kind of like between down and less down. The other thing that happened, and this just to, again, this is not going to be appropriate for everyone, but some of you, it might change your life. I was doing streaming and I'm like, bring me in light boxes because I look awful on my stream. And for some reason I thought that more light would help, and it doesn't. But we brought them in, and I go, get me those good, sexy LED lights. We did. And simultaneously, I had the worst week of depression in my life.
Oh, no.
And luckily, I stumbled onto an article that talked a lot about how blue light, this ultraviolet light, has a huge emotional impact, or a huge psychological impact on people with mood disorders. This is a stunner, guys, because there's a place, a facility where people go to get advice, and like, it's like a clinic where you go because it's like, I have manic depression and it's destroying everything. And so you go to them and they fix you. Or they help you do it, but it's like an intensive thing. And what they've known for ages is if people are coming from the West, their therapy takes 2 weeks longer than if they come from the East, if they fly in. And why is it? It's because they're effectively, the sunlight, the daytime is hitting their eyes at a different time of the day. And like, this sounds like some tinfoil hat bullshit, right? But like, I did a bunch of reading, and one of the new things that's being discovered is that the way that the light, this blue light, the sunlight that makes our brains think, hey, you're awake now, hey, be good. The thing that influences seasonal affective disorder. For people with mood disorders of a different sort, if you get this light in your eyes late at night, it can ruin you, aside from disrupting your sleep schedule. So I pulled those light boxes out of my house. I started turning off this overhead light. I have a special light here that has no blue light in it, installed an app on my monitor, installed the thing on my phone, and like, I have been sitting pretty for months.
Wow.
It's amazing. I've also made sure I try to get a walk every day, which isn't the same as going to the gym, but it's better than I did before. And like, did that help the very next day? No, but I make my sorry ass go and do it, knowing that that will help the bad times from happening as often.
Right.
You know, when I'm depressed, I don't want to go for a walk, so I have to go for a walk before I'm depressed. That's self-care. That's like that maintenance, the stuff we do before we're in trauma.
Which I think is a good thing to bring up, the term self-care. We've talked a lot about things we struggle with, things that we're currently struggling with. Self-care as a term can mean a lot of things. I've said it many times, and many answers, whether it be panels or internet, I'm always like, my focus next year is going to be self-care. And that's been my phrase for 2 years. I should eventually get around to that. I'm trying to actually be better about it, and I'm learning. And one, I think it's making sure you schedule time for yourself. Yeah. We have a culture that seems to put on a pedestal those who work the hardest, the longest. And by comparison, a lot of European cultures eschew that idea and instead put the emphasis and the priority on time with the family and time for yourself to be a human being. And as such, you look at these populations that have suffered from much lesser levels of general depression, and you can't help but see a correlation there. You have to consciously make the decision that if you feel like you're slipping away from having any time to yourself to be happy, or to enjoy hobbies, to enjoy interests, you have to begin to hard schedule time, even if it means missing opportunities or possibly letting people down occasionally, as long as it doesn't threaten your career per se. to add more stress, but you need to really carve that time out. And I'm trying to be better about that and hope to do so going into the new year.
And it is really hard too, because it's like a lot of us, financially like can't stop.
We can.
And it's just we just can't. And like, I think that goes for so many people out there. It's like, if you can't not go to work, you can't not work. Otherwise you don't eat.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's another cultural thing. So it's like, how do we fix that?
I feel so bad for those of you, like, because I used to be doing it right. I made very deliberate choices. I went to a little college. I lived in a small town. I lived in, to be frank, like real shithole apartments, like I never paid more than $220 a month rent, through my entire student career. And because of that, I worked some jobs and I was okay. And I was okay with crap food, and I didn't have a car. And so like I could survive. And then at some point I lost all of those skills. And I started working like an American, if not like somebody from Japan,
Yeah. And which that's an extreme case.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. A big key to that, just put a capstone on that, is learning to say no.
Oh God.
It's so hard for God, it's been the hardest lesson I'm still learning, is when people ask for your attention, people ask for your time, when they ask for your commitment to things that aren't necessarily and would take away from that time that you do allocate for self-care. You have to learn to say no, even if someone will be disappointed, even if it might temporarily damage a relationship. You have to be a priority in your life and make sure that you're not allowing these perceived responsibilities to other people at a higher priority than to yourself.
Yeah, I still struggle with that. Still, I think it's something we all struggle with. It's it's so hard.
I think that maybe that's a small town thing where, like, I think a lot of folks in New York or like big city LA who grew up there I kind of envy their ability to just like not give a shit. Like I wish I could just have that and like put it on like a shirt some days. But one of the tricks that I have, because like I built my team, and like my inability to say no is especially bad. Here's how bad it got when I had an upswing. The local bookstore was closing. So I decided that I would open a bookstore. That was my plan, to open a bookstore in this town of 23,000 people. And I honestly thought that I could do it in about 2 weeks. Now, and see, this is why it's a mental disorder, people. When you go up and it's like, I am the king of everything, and I know all these people, and I am Pat goddamn Rothfuss, and so it's like, okay, bookstore in 2 weeks, you go, let's do it. After that, I really came to grips with the fact that this was screwing up my life. And I went to my team, because I do have a team now. Amanda's running the stream, and people help me organize my life and plan my travel. And I say, okay, I don't get to do any more projects unless I run them by you guys. And they go, thank God. Now, you might not have a team or an assistant out there, but you can build a team. You can be like find 3 people who love you, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your significant other, maybe it's your sister, your brother, and say, hey, I got a thing where I can't say no, or I start these projects, I start new things, and it really screws me in the long run. Like form an advisory board. Because here's the thing, if you know that it's a problem and you make a plan, I go, and so when people approach you, here's what I say. I say, I can't do any projects unless I run them by my team. And it just puts one step in between me instinctively saying yes and burning another part of my life away instead of getting good sleep and spending time with my children.
That's exactly what I did with my husband. Like he was like, you cannot accept anything without asking me first, because he's my team. He's just like, no, like he will make sure that it's like worth my time and okay and won't kill me and blah blah blah. So like he's my check, because I need it. I'll just say yes to anything. Be like, hey, would you want to just climb the Empire State Building with me? Well, like, sure, that sounds like fun. Like, I think I can learn how to do that. It's just like, and I think that comes from doing so many things in life that you had to do without even thinking about it. It's like if you had to do something without even thinking twice, like, wow, this is really hard. This is like the third death certificate that I've had to go fill out. I guess I just have to do that. So,
Yep. We have been going for about 2 hours, guys. I am delighting in this conversation, but we don't have to solve all the world's problems in this one stream. And it breaks my heart a little bit to say that, because we got a great turnout. I love chatting with you guys, but we could always like do this again in a while.
Yeah. I love that.
I honestly
check with Rossford. I'm just kidding.
Right. Yes. That was a test. You succeeded.
Well done, Holly. Well done.
Experience awarded.
Oh, good. Yay.
And so, should we, do we want to, I will say to everybody who's donating, or who is part of my normal streamers, I will end this stream so we have a kind of a distinct video just for this chat. I will fire up my stream directly afterwards and do a little bit of unpacking, and then I will do all the prize draws for my stream right after that, and answer any questions that other people have about the fundraiser. I'm more than happy to, or the charity or Heifer International itself. I'm more than willing to talk about those things, but I'll do that after we officially end this stream and start up the other one. I don't know, guys. Do we want to like final thoughts or closing statements, or
sure.
Something that you wanted to say, but I talked over you? I probably did that here. I'm really caffeinated, and I'm so sorry.
You were great.
You were awesome, and I have not had caffeine yet, so.
Makes two of us. Let's pick up on that. Let's see. Final thoughts for me. I guess I could say one. This type of conversation needs to happen more often with more people in general. I think we need to destigmatize the conversation about mental illness culture-wide, and that comes with small steps. And so, Patrick, you hosting something like this and the community being able to have these discussions and not just feel solace in the communal idea that it's okay to have these problems and help each other, live better with them, but that the long-standing idea that, you're lesser or broken because you have issues needs to be just gotten rid of. And that can only happen with conversations like this. And they're not easy. This has not been easy for me, but we as people who have platforms and have individuals that pay attention to our lives for some strange reason, I think that carries a responsibility, if we're willing to step up to that, to use this space to have these healthy conversations and to try and do with whatever little attention we have to make the world hopefully a little better place for the people who are willing to watch and listen. So continue to take that out into the world with you if you can. If you have a friend who's having a hard time and you think you're willing to listen, maybe reach out and see if they want to have someone to talk to. If you yourself are feeling like you haven't been able to pass that barrier to finally seek help or a therapist to help you work through your problems, use this momentum to maybe take that step out the door and try it out. Carry this conversation forward, carry this momentum, and see how you can incorporate this in your life and make it a little better. I know I intend to.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't really say it any better, but just, I think having compassion for yourself is one of the most difficult things. And that's kind of something that is the most important thing to cultivate. Like if you think about, the compassion, like if you're a caregiver per se, and you give compassion to other people, you should be treating yourself with that same compassion. And if you feel like you aren't, then you should find a way to do that. and really learn what it's like to be able to accept it and love yourself despite all of your flaws. Because like I said before, your flaws are what make you beautiful. And if you can accept those, then that's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's the word fascinating is what I like. You know, we are faceted individuals. And if you've I always think of broken glass. If you've ever really looked at a piece of broken glass, it's like, that shit is beautiful.
And as long as it's not coming out of your foot at the time.
It's a different sort of beautiful in that instance.
Then you're in urgent care.
Yeah.
And so like pretty much all of my favorite people are in some way beautifully broken. And so many of these things that are legitimate disorders are only exacerbations of absolutely ordinary things. And honestly, some of them are really wonderful things. I personally believe that many mood disorders are the unfortunate side effect of an overabundance of empathy. And it can wreck your day. It doesn't mean that you're bad, because I honestly believe that empathy is the defining human characteristic. If you don't have it, you're a sociopath. If you do have it, and the more of it you have, the more of a wondrous person you are. However, if you have too much of it, it will start to shake your life apart. And that's a shame, because this thing that makes you wonderful can also wreck you. But it's sort of like anything, too much of anything will poison you. And the same is true with all of these other very ordinary, very good things in slightly higher doses. And in terms of like, oh no, I'm bad, or oh no, I'm this or that. You know, what really helped me is when I read Stephen Fry's blog post that he wrote after he tried to kill himself. And he was like, I don't know what to say, except that I think I was really lonely. And he goes, and it was extra helpful for me, because he also talked about the fact that he has cyclothamia, the same thing I have. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he goes, it seems weird that I'd be so lonely, because everyone wants to spend time with me. I get invited everywhere. He goes, and by all reports, I am gregarious and a delight to converse with. I can be the center of the room. I know I'm a good performer. And he goes, it doesn't matter. And I can still be so lonely that when it got so bad, I tried to die. And here's the thing. Stephen Fry is a fucking delight. Everyone knows this. You know this. If you know who he is, you know how wonderful he is. If Stephen Fry, marvel that he is, can feel lonely and sad and broken and worthless and be wrong, you, lovely, beautiful, broken person out there, you might think that you're a trash person, but like, fuck no. Like, super no. I refuse. I repudiate you. You are wonderful. It helps if you can look to these other people and say, but you're great. Why do you feel that way? Then do that to yourself. Practice doing it with other people, and then it will get a little easier with you. Just like Matthew said, try to exercise this empathy internally. Try to take half as good a care of yourself as you do of other people. I feel pretty good about this stream.
Me too. Thank you for including us on this.
Yeah.
Patrick.
I was like, the only thing we were missing was just like nice cups of tea and sitting in a cafe talking about this stuff.
Well, next time we know what to shoot for. I mean,
right?
I would love that. Next time I'm in LA, like maybe I could sweet talk the Geek and Sundry people to just like giving us the studio for a little bit.
We can make that happen. That'd be lovely.
I'd love to do one of these in person. We can do the tea or the wine or whatever.
Both.
And
I love twine.
Twine.
So again, I can't thank you guys enough. Please, everyone on the stream, if you want to see more things like this in the future, you can follow the stream. If you want to see more of these lovely people, you can follow them on the tweets or the socialnesses. Do you guys want to mention where to find y'all?
Yeah, sure. Holly, want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm just Commander Holly on YouTube, and on Twitter I'm at Holly Conrad. And I'm on Commander Holly on Twitch too. So all the stuff is just Commander Holly, and you can find me. I'm easy to find. Just look for my weird face.
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Mercer. I think Instagram at Matthew Mercer Rio. And find me Thursday nights usually at 7 p.m. Pacific on Geek and Sundry's Twitch, Dungeon Mastering Critical Role.
Oh yeah, if you want to watch my D&D show, which is, I mean, look, I would do it even if no one showed up. So I appreciate if you show up, just because I love it so much.
That means you're doing it right.
Yeah. That's Tuesdays from 4 to 6 Pacific time, and Chris Perkins, who writes the books, is our DM, and he's a wonderful person, and it's just the best thing, and it's good for my mental health. Like, we talk about it all the time, how good D&D is for mental health, so we just love it. So really yeah, I watch all of our D&D games.
I will say, like, I want to go back in time and say, here's a tip: find a group of people to sit down at a table and play games with. Yeah. It's sometimes hard to say, hey, can we get together and just be friends for an hour? The games are an excuse to have a good social experience. Yeah. And as we get more and more adult, I've learned that you need to schedule social time. And it's easier to do that if you know you're going to be playing a game sometimes. I'm so jealous of the fact that you guys have regular games.
Oh, trust me. I think every day, like, I get anxious about when the game will stop. I'm like, it'll stop one day. Like, I actually think I get anxious, and I'm like, no, it has to keep going. So, because it's so good. Agree.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
It's for years and years and years and years, having these games be just an occasional thing every 6 to 8 weeks, and then periods of time without gaming, and it was such a solace for me. For me, honestly, the joy of this community kind of exploding in recent years is the fact that we've had the opportunity to play as often as we do. There's now comparatively a plethora, a glut of players, and now dungeon masters and game masters that all want to run games too, and it wasn't like that growing up. So it's a better opportunity now than ever, thanks to technology and the community, to engage in these games and hopefully find some additional form of therapy through these experiences with your friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's a great note to go out on. If you two just we'll cut it off on our end, but you guys don't need to clip out of the call yet, because I want to thank you really in a gushy way as soon as the stream cuts out. And everyone who showed up, thank you so much. Feel free to follow the channel here if you want to see more of these talks of various things. I'm planning one about geek parenting, talking more mental health streams. I actually want to do one about death and dying, which is a really big thing, and nobody talks about it, and so we all feel really alone and like we're doing it wrong when we have to confront it in our lives.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And so thank you again for showing up. Please do consider following the links that I'm sure my mods and everyone will drop now in the chat. And thanks so much for coming. Bye.
Goodbye.